The Spurs just completed their 4-game roadie. Is there anything good that came out of it?
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Go back to Locked On Spurs right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kins 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. Hey, your Spurs have a couple of days off. They just finished that 4-game roadie. And yeah, I know they went winless. The A-team tank. You guys are loving it right now. But we're going to play a game. We know record-wise it's horrible. And we know they went 0-4 in the road in this recent road trip. But is there anything you could pull that was positive despite them getting just smoked up and down the court? We're going to try our best to do that. And we can't, part of the game is everybody, we can't say, well, they lost games for the tank. So that's too obvious. But we're going to be discussing that. And if you've been paying attention, Popovich has been making it very clear. They're looking at the last remaining games, and even then some before this recording, that, yeah, they're looking at players, and there's some players who could be on the bubble. We're going to be looking at who might be those players right here on Locked On Spurs. And we have a special guest, first time making his debut here on Locked On Spurs. And he's real close to my heart, too, because I lived in Michigan for a long time, 4 years of my life, Lansing, Michigan. And wouldn't you know it, small world, there's a Lansing guy in San Antonio now. He is Nick Mantas. Nick Mantas, he's formerly worked at the weekend sports anchor with KTXS in Abilene, then up in my old neck of the woods, Lansing, Michigan, at WLNS-TV for 3 years, covering Michigan State and the University of Michigan. Sports anchor up there. Welcome to San Antonio, and welcome to Locked On Spurs, Nick.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's one heck of a welcome right there. And as Michigan, guys who have been up there and
Yep.
have braved those winters and gone through everything that it comes with living in mid-Michigan, I'm very excited not just to be here with you on this show, but also to be in an area where we don't have to worry about shoveling sunshine. So,
well, let me tell you this, Nick. I remember my first month in Michigan, and I remember Lansing, wherever it is. Lansing's the capital of Michigan, and it's the state capital is there. And I live right behind the state capital-ish. You remember I was telling you about the Ferris Park Towers. It's kind of sort of behind it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that was the first time I lived in a city that shut down at 5:30. Like all the lights started blinking yellow. Like everything just went to yellow. And I was like, what is going on here?
Right.
So, but I miss it. I one of my many regrets in life is not spending more time in Lansing, Michigan. Very Norman Rockwell feel. You remember those.
Absolutely.
Neighborhoods there. But Nick, again, welcome to San Antonio.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
Nick is doing a little freelance work. He's going to tell you more if you're looking for some help out in San Antonio or those surrounding areas, but he'll brag about himself later on in the show. So Nick, let's just dive into this real fast. And look, you heard in the intro, everybody did it right now. We're going to try to play this game here, saying like, okay, what positives came out of the 4-game recent road trip for the Silver and Black? And look, we know it was bad, like really, really bad. Yeah. Biggest loss in Popovich's history recently in the game versus Boston. But we'll let you go first. You're the guest. What are 2 good things that came out of this recent road trip despite the record?
Well, one of the things that I really like seeing is kind of what you were hinting at before, which is that Coach Pop is looking to evaluate, guys, and we'll get into how he's evaluating people later on. But when it comes to guys who I really like seeing really coming into their own, is more, I would say, the guys like, you got. Not just Zach Collins, who, is having himself an absolute performance, but when you got guys like Sandro Mamukelashvili, 20 points at a season high against the Pelicans to start the road trip, obviously that was a tough game to watch. But I think he's showing signs that he could be a guy that the Spurs might consider holding on to when you could just see his overall skill. And not just being a guy who can really do some things successfully down low offensively with those 20 points he had in that game, but also defensively, I think that he's got some things to work on. But he's one of those guys that I think moves with a lot of that Euro style. He's not just an old traditional Shaq kind of big. He can move a lot more fluid than the way in which he could put himself in positions. And so having Mamu and Zach Collins coming around into their own and showing their abilities as a big, I think is making a case for them to have a solid front court with the addition of somebody like we were mentioning, somebody maybe like Wemby or whoever else, is going to be there in those first couple of picks in the draft. So that was definitely the first thing that I really liked seeing, was how the bigs were really kind of dominating or just coming into their own and just playing a lot more free and fun, obviously because of the record, obviously because of where we are in the season. It just made me kind of smile a little bit. And then I'd say the second thing is seeing Devin Vassell's development this season. I mean, it's been a lot more. It's been remarkable to see. I mean, when you have a backcourt that's bolstered by so much of this talent that's coming into this program over the last couple of years, I think his improvements offensively. I mean, 18 games with 20 or more points, 7. Only last season, he's averaging 18 points a game. The 38 that he's played this season with 32 starts. You saw more of that in last night's game, against the Celtics with 16, and they, plus the 16 points against the Bucks. I'm just excited to see him, develop into more of an offensive weapon next year. And I think it's going to be exciting to see what he can do moving forward and being a bigger body, when it comes to the backcourt itself. So those are the two things. Looking at Vassell's ability to come back from the knee surgery, the front court with Mamu and Zach Collins, having some fun out there. Those were two key things that I really loved from the road trip.
Yeah, you took one of mine that I was going to bring up in the second segment, but I'll just dive into it now. Okay. And I'll agree with you, but mine's more of a collective thing and not necessarily individually. As you mentioned, Zach Collins and Mamu is just collectively. So I'm looking at one good thing that is coming out for me is the collective bigs. The Spurs possibly have a good problem. And that being, if they do win out the draft sweepstakes and get the number 1 pick and Wembanyama comes to San Antonio, okay, great. And check this out, everybody. You got Wemby, Zach Collins, Mamu, and we're forgetting about Charles Bassey. Right. Charles Bassey. Yeah, before that injury, he was that bouncy big. Now, Nick, I know you're new to San Antonio, so let me catch you up here. Okay. For over the last couple of years, maybe a little longer, the Spurs have had a good big, and that was Jakob Poeltl. Nothing wrong with him. He was good, putting up good numbers, but he wasn't the athletic big. So for a lot of Spurs fans, they had been hammering and, kicking the doors open saying, when are we going to get a very athletic, bouncy big? And he's been that guy so far. So I think one of the good things that came out of this road trip is collectively the bigs, that the Spurs possibly have a good problem ahead of them heading into the offseason, and then some. Should the Spurs win out the draft lottery and get that number 1 pick? I mean, I think it's obvious. It better be Wemby, Spurs. No surprises, no freaking surprises. Right. Yeah, but Nick, I want to bring you up something to you, and now we'll get into my my last pick in the second segment. But I want to talk to you more about the bigs here. It is a good problem to have, but do you think that it's also on the other side of the coin going to be hurting maybe you Spurs fans, whatever, because you're going to have to see a guy, maybe some guys leave. I don't think Bassey, he's now in the NBA contract. He ain't going back to Austin for the G League. Zach Collins has proven himself to be that top 10 pick that he was with Portland. You think Mamu might be the odd big man out in this situation?
Possibly. He could be the guy who they might consider moving. When it comes to if it becomes a crowded front court with who they have availability.
Yeah. Oh no, not that, but
right. God forbid. But at the same time, I think that it gives them options right now. It wasn't a straight down the middle decision of being like Mama's got to go. We got Zach Collins, you got Bassey, like Mamu's the guy out. I don't think it's as clear. And I think, like you mentioned, that might be a good problem to have. And I think it puts them in a position where they have options to decide what they want to do and who they want to put where. And I think that, Mamu's ability to show up in the time when, I think a lot of people are watching for reasons, which is unfortunate at the end of the season. Usually you're watching for a playoff push, or usually you hope to be watching to see some things that are exciting for the team, especially in time. And now we're watching to see how good they're going to lose. But at the same time, I think to see him develop and show what he's capable of, it's almost like an audition. You're putting your best foot forward and saying, hey, this is what I can do. And if something happens where Spurs don't get Wemby, I'm an option. And I think that's a good spot to be in right now.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Well, we're not done talking about your silver and black. When we get back, we're going to dive into my other pick as far as one of the bright things that came out of an 0-4 recent road trip. And then we're going to look at which players could be on the bubble heading into next season right here with Nick Mantas. Make sure to follow him on Twitter, and you better do it right now. It's at Nick_Mantas. He's new to San Antonio, so all you San Antonio Spurs fans living in SA, make sure to give him a nice, warm welcome to San Antonio. Nick, I'll give you a little advice here too. Never mention Kawhi Leonard. I'm going to let you know right now.
I could see that. Yeah, that's not going to be good for anybody. Not for me. Not for anybody in San Antonio. Let's just not. He who shall not be named at this point.
Exactly. All right. Well, we'll be back with Nick in just a few minutes. But I want to talk to you about FanDuel. You got to get the FanDuel app right now. The tournament, the NCAA tournament, that is heating up, and there's no better place to get in on the action other than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon today. Sign up and claim your no sweat first bet. Just join FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up today and claim that no sweat first bet right now. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net. It's a safe, secure, and super easy to use app. So don't miss out on your shot at the no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. And I'm also excited to talk about the newest sponsor right here on Locked On Spurs, locally owned. And you better be going to this coffee spot every single day on your commute, going to work, or maybe even coming back. So, hey, San Antonio, did you actually have to stay up late to catch the end of the Spurs game? And you need to pick me up? Then you got to look no further than Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee. Mudslingers is locally owned, independent coffee shop, and they're proud to make delicious coffee for our community. They do it fast and friendly so you can get on with your day. Whether you're in the mood for a latte, cold brew, or a Red Bull infused lightning bolt, that sounds good. They have drinks for every taste. They also have a wide selection of dairy alternatives, low-calorie options, even caffeine-free drinks for those who want to just take it easy. Swing by Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee for a tasty and convenient caffeine fix located at 2404 Thousand Oaks Drive near 281 and 1604. Open every day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I go there often. You should too. Life is too short for bland coffee. Let's go ahead and bring back our guest. He is Nick Mantas, new to San Antonio, former sports anchor out in my old stomping grounds, Lansing, Michigan, with WLNS-TV for 3 years. And he covered the Michigan State and the University of Michigan. He also served as the weekend sports anchor. He'll brag about himself later. I hope part of the bragging part is that you actually survived the Nut House. Remember the Nut House across the street from Ludwig Stadium?
Yeah, those are good nights there. Yeah, that's a good time.
I don't remember many of those nights going at one, but we're talking about the silver and black. And Nick, I want to, kind of round out this topic here. And one of the bright spots for me in this recent road trip, despite the record, has been the play of Tre Jones.
Yeah,
really good. In I believe in 3 of the 4 games, a double figure scoring. He had a double, 10 points, 12 assists, really showing that not only was a great second round pick for the Spurs team, but possibly being the first, I guess, the head of the snake moving forward. But very similar to Wemby, do you think if the Spurs were not to get the number 1 pick and maybe fall to 2 and you bring in a guy like Scoot Henderson, do you think that'll impact Tre Jones, Nick?
I think it could. I think it possibly could. But at the same time, I think that there might be a conversation to have when it comes to, whether or not they like the continuity of having a guy like Tre, who can play with a lot more of some comfort with the guys that he has already right now. I think that that was something that was interesting that they talked about, coming back from certain games, was that they couldn't wait to have everybody back because they like playing together. This team enjoys having that camaraderie, as most teams will, especially going through an entire season together. That's been rough. You base your comfort and your admiration for each other that we're all going through this together. Like, this is how we're all going to survive, is leaning on each other and really being supportive of each other in that way. And I think that's one of the things that it makes a case for Tre Jones, is that he's been there. He knows the guys, and he really can have that comfort level when it comes to playing, with other guys on the team and stuff. So, it'll be interesting. That's one of the things that's, I think that's the if you want to put like a neon sign above the Spurs off season, it will be interesting. And so I think it's going to be exciting to see what's draft comes around.
But these are like good problems to have for San Antonio. There's nothing wrong. Look, but very similar to, we're mentioning Wemby and Mamu, and Mamu possibly being the odd man out. Yeah, same thing with the guard position. So you say you bring in a Scoot Henderson. So then there's Tre Jones, Scoot, Malachi Branham, and then Blake Wesley. So then what? Then what? So again, does Wesley go to the G League? I can definitely see that. Okay, so maybe that alleviates a little bit of the pressure there. Malachi, will he go to the G League? I don't know. I think there's something there with him. Sure, he had a kind of an up and down season, but when he's up, and he's a 3-level scorer, and you like his potential. So yeah, having Scoot Henderson won't be a bad thing, but again, you got to be worried about the ripple effects. And we'll get into segment 3 in a bit, but kind of looking at that segment, Nick, you got to understand that a lot of the roster is going to be shaped by the draft.
Right.
It really is. Wemby, I think the Spurs currently they have pieces to build around him. Scoot, I don't know.
Right.
So, but we'll talk about that in a while. But one other good thing I liked coming out of the road trip is, I don't know how to say this, Nick, so help me out here. It's like they kind of threw the white flag already on the season. When Popovich says, we're just evaluating talent right now, they're not going for W's and L's. I mean, I'm pretty sure they want W and L's, but I think they know it is what it is. But what about just Popovich in the sense that he's not flipping tables? He really hasn't been flipping tables. And then this last 4 games of them just getting demolished. I mean, 137-93 against Boston, coming out even keel, short and sweet. But you got to credit his patience. So I had to give the Popovich's patience as something good thing that came out of this 4-game losing streak.
That's an interesting I wasn't thinking of it like that, because you've always thought of like either he's going to have that quiet demeanor or he's going to be flipping tables like you've mentioned. And so it's interesting to see how he's transitioning with a team that's a lot younger, with a team that he's becoming a little bit more patient with. And he's mentioned in the past that that's something that's really been interesting for him, is that he knows with a younger squad, he's going to have to do things differently than he did when he, had guys understood the way in which he wanted to do things and was winning championships and being, one of the best teams in the league. And so I think everyone goes through transition times when things change on such a huge scale like they have for the roster of the Spurs at this time, and to have a younger team and to have people who he maybe has to explain things a little bit differently to, especially a younger generation that he's getting older and they're getting younger. I think it's been interesting to see if that his patience has become more of the way in which he operates now.
I mean, in this situation with the current roster with teenagers, we got to remember this, Nick. There are a bunch of teenagers on this roster,
right?
That if you come down on hard of them, you may break them.
Right,
you might break them.
Yeah, it's a different generation of player.
It really is, and you got to look at what Popovich has done. So, was he very short and sweet after the game versus Boston? Yes, I think he only lasted 20 seconds, and he got up and he walked out. But he wasn't calling them out. He wasn't, singling out individuals. He just, tipped his cap to Boston and moved on. And that's the thing too. And Popovich's past, Nick, and I'm pretty sure you knew about this even when you were up in Michigan, that Pop would normally go to the soft card. He would call out his team, say soft, they're soft, they're soft. He in my recollection, and the Spurs fans are going to correct me right now. And yes, everybody, I did warn Nick ahead of time. You guys are unforgiving sometimes, but he's only gone to the soft card maybe twice this season. And if you're keeping score, that's like a career low for him. So he did it once in preseason and once like kind of in the middle of the season, and that was it. No, I'm sorry, it was right before the All-Star break when he called out their defense. So
unfortunately, a lot of career lows for Coach Pop this year, which is sad to see. But one thing
I
that
have
I thought
a personal
was
career low too, Nick, is that he hasn't called me out in post game conferences and pre game.
Well, that's good.
So that's good.
There you go.
That's good. I'll take
it. That's a positive.
Yeah. What you're going to say, Nick?
I was just going to say one thing that was interesting was that he did it in a very interesting way last night when he was saying that they gave in at the end of the road trip. That was his way of putting it in a different tone, if you will, was that they just gave in. You know, it was the end of the road trip. You know, they've had some tough losses going through when it came to the Milwaukee and obviously the Washington game was tough to see that fourth quarter just kind of fall apart at the end there. And exactly. And to see Jaylen Brown go off for 41 points, you know, he gets ejected later on, but I mean, he was just on a tear. And at some point the fatigue of a road trip is going to cut in and you either push through in situations where you're making a playoff run or you give in. And I think when he said that the team just gave in at the end of the road trip was his way of doing, you know, them a little not a big jab in any way, but just a little, you know, just kind of talk about the team in which he wanted to in a different way this year.
Can you believe it, Nick? We actually did it. We found some shining light in an otherwise abysmal 4-game roadie.
You got to be positive, especially with what I've realized so far, San Antonio weather, the way it just flip flops like a yo-yo back and forth and stuff. You have to have positivity here and there, right? It's going to come around. It's going to come around.
Yeah, you're definitely, or unless you're experienced already, but you're definitely going to be wishing it come the summertime, like peak summer San Antonio. You're going to be like, I want to go back to Lansing.
I'm going to start melting away. Seriously.
Yeah, you start melting away. But I was reversed because when I lived in Michigan for the first time, you know, again, for those of you who don't know, Michigan is known for just being freaking cold. My first winter there was, I want to go back to San Antonio. It was too cold up here. So that was my reaction. Hey, we're talking with Nick Mantas right here on Locked On Spurs. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at Nick_Mantas. That's MANTAS. He formerly worked as a weekend anchor with KTXS in Abilene, and then in my old neck of the woods, and his old neck of the woods, Lansing, Michigan, WLNS-TV for 3 years. By the way, Nick, I spent a lot of time in Myers. Loved going to Myers.
You say yes. That's how I know you're real. You're a real one when you say with the S. It's either Myers or Kroger or Kroger's.
Kroger's. It's Myers, everybody. Yeah.
Myers.
Yeah. When we get back, we're going to ask Nick which players are on the bubble. And in case you have not been paying attention, Popovich has been making it very clear they are evaluating talent as we speak right here on Locked On Spurs. We're back right here on Locked On Spurs with Nick Mantas. Follow him on Twitter at Nick_Mantas. He is a former sports anchor up in Abilene and in Lansing, Michigan. He'll tell you more about himself in just a few seconds. So, Nick, Spurs fans, Popovich has been making it very loud and clear. They are evaluating talent. They're at that point of the season where they got to start looking ahead, and they're already doing that. I think we can kind of push aside some of the obvious that are going to be back, your Keldons, your Devas, your Sohans, you know, Trey Jones, etc.
Right.
But there are a few bubble players that could stay or be here or not be here, and perhaps in Austin or in another uniform. But I think, Nick, we kind of alluded to it. I think everything hinges on the draft, where they land, who they get, etc. So keep that in mind, everybody, as we move forward. But Nick, you're the guest. I'll let you go forward. You got maybe a player or two that are on the bubble that you think so?
Yeah, I got two guys, and I'll start with one that'll be interesting to see where they go with the draft. But one that I think we haven't really talked about a lot this year, and that's Romeo Langford. And I think his health has been one of the biggest question marks for his career so far. Just to see, you know, he obviously struggled during his time when he was with the Celtics. And then once again, this season had a stretch in January where he was out. It didn't play last night against his former team due to his abductor injury, which is when I used to be a strength coach. I'll tell you that's a really tough injury on your groin when you're trying to push off on your legs and stuff. And so that's really tough to come back with. He had a really bright moment, which was that 23-point game against the Knicks right before the new year. I believe that was December 29th. And so, it's really interesting to see, that unfortunately, it's the name of the game. You got to stay healthy and you got to produce. And so, with him not being able to stay healthy, I think that'll be. I think he's one of my biggest. Circle him on your depth chart of bubble guy, and then and I would say after that, I feel bad for him because he hasn't really got a lot of playing time. But I would say Gordy Jang. And then one other thing that I think would be interesting for Gordy Jang moving forward is that it's his veteran presence is good to have to somebody like that. But and again, like you've mentioned in the past on all Locked On Spurs is that the injury report is the MVP of this season. And so for him, that's obviously a big part of things that you would have, but you may possibly keep a guy like Doug McDermott when it comes to balance of veteran presence and averaging 10 points a game. But I think something might be interesting for Jang moving forward would be a perfect fit to have him maybe as like a mentor to somebody like Wemby. The guy speaks 5 languages: Spanish, Italian, English, Wolof, and French. He's a great communicator when it comes to being a veteran presence. And I think that might be a great way for him to maybe be like a special assistant on the coaching staff moving forward. But right. I think having him move forward in his career, whether it be with another team, whether it be a special assistant on Coach Pops' team, Coach Pops' staff, I think it would be a great way to move him forward with it, because that gives options for whoever else you wanted to bring in for that roster spot.
Good pick. Good pick. You took my Romeo line for one. Gotcha. I agree with you. Yeah. Availability is the best available. What did they say? Availability is the best ability. And
exactly.
He hasn't been it yet. But tons of potential. Keldon Johnson was glowing about him during that stretch that Romeo had in the season where he was just playing lights out. But I can tell you one guy that's not on the bubble, Nick Mantas. Popovich would be stupid to let you go, Nick.
I appreciate
it. Yeah. But all kidding aside, I gotta agree with you though, for sure. I mean, Romeo is definitely on the bubble. Just cannot stay on that court. But he's been like that historically since coming into the NBA. Historically, I talked to some Boston media that I know, and when the trade was made, and the first thing they said was, "Good luck." Get used to seeing him in the injury report more often than not. So, and that proved out to be quite true. So, I gotta agree with you. It has to be Romeo Langford's one name you got to keep in mind moving forward. But I'm gonna throw a name out here, and it's just more of a numbers thing. You're looking at a guy like Barlow. I don't see him fitting in. I think he'll be relegated to the G League. So I don't think he'll leave the San Antonio system. I don't know if he'd be wearing a San Antonio jersey more often than not next season. Again, especially if they get, Wemby or, again, putting aside his off the court situation, Brandon Miller, really displaces him as well. But again, Barlow, he's out of that overtime elite program. They've been pumping out some great talent. Yeah. You got the Thompson brothers, they're from the overtime elite. Pipeline. So there's worth there. But I want to circle back to you where you're talking about Dang and McDermott and veteran presence. One thing I'm starting to think about this team moving forward in the rebuild, Nick, is you're going to have to bring in some vets.
Yeah.
You can't go full on tank / rebuild and go youth mode without the steady hand of a veteran. I can definitely see Gorgie moving on, but something tells me McDermott might be around for a while. Your thoughts?
I completely agree. I think you got to have somebody like him, a guy who's played on different teams, a guy who really has an ability to not just understand the game. I'm not saying that Chang doesn't. I'm just saying that Doug McDermott is had a lot more playing time when it comes to 589 career games. And, he's for his career, he's averaged almost 10 points a game. 8 years in the pros. And just this is a guy who's, for shout out to all the 30-year-olds out there. We're still doing it big. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
So it's just one of those things. I think he definitely, I think, is somebody who is one guy, veteran presence that you would definitely want on a team that is going to have a lot more younger guys moving forward, especially when it comes to the guards who need somebody like that to rely on. So
yeah. Eventually, there has to come to a point where the Spurs team has to stop flipping players or stop shuffling around, because if you just look at the last 2 games versus Milwaukee and Boston, what's one common thing that the Spurs players said after the game, and even Popovich said, these guys have been around together for a while. They already have that chemistry. They know each other. So moving pieces is fine in the early stages of a rebuild, which the Spurs are going through right now. And next season, well, let me ask you, Nick, do you think next season it's still going to be, a rough one? Or do you think it gets a little bit better?
I think it gets a little better. And the only reason why I say that is just because I think that, like we've mentioned just now, like this team playing well together is the way in which it develops into a more cohesive group, and a way in which it goes back to the way that San Antonio basketball has always been known for, which is team play. It's not. I mean, nowadays you want to see your big 3 or your stars or guys who are going to be out there doing all that they possibly can to really dominate and hold most of the points and hold most of the possessions. But a team like the Grizzlies, who has really come out and shown what you can do with a little bit of youth and a little bit of experience, obviously you have got a guy like John Morant. It's sure. Going to change an entire organization. But that's where the draft comes in. And that's where you get a guy within the first couple of picks who could change this organization, a team that knows how to play well together, a solid group that understands each other throughout this tough season, who's bonded over going through rough times together. And now I think things are going to get a little bit better when it comes to being in the position that the Spurs are and moving forward throughout the draft and going into next year.
We played a game on yesterday's Locked On Spurs. I want to get your thoughts. So you have 4 teams in front of you right now. Nick, you have the Magic, you have the OKC Thunder, you have Memphis Grizzlies, and you have the Phoenix Suns. Which of those 4 teams would you like to see the Spurs emulate as far as a rebuild is concerned? So the way we broke it down was this. So Phoenix, the one common thread that most of them have is that very, very high pick. So, right. from Ayton to Banchero, and then obviously John Morant. Okay, fine. So that's the easy one.
Right.
But then this becomes their approach. Now you look at Phoenix, super freaking aggressive, bringing in Chris Paul, trading for Kevin Durant. You got Orlando, that teams seems to be playing it the slow and steady approach, but they're starting to come out of their rebuilding phase.
Right.
OKC's right there too, coming out. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and then you got Memphis, so getting lucky in the draft. Your Desmond Baines. If you had to pick a pattern, which one would it be?
I think that the Memphis is probably still my pick when it comes to that. Obviously getting lucky in the draft, like you've mentioned, but at the same time, I think aggressive, the way in which the Phoenix Suns have done it, it can only get lucky if you sell the farm. If you go all out,
which they did recently for Durant.
Exactly. That was exactly what I was going to mention, is that so far what I've seen Phoenix's way of doing things is they're going to be as aggressive as possible in order to get that done. And it's an interesting style of doing it, but I really do like the way Memphis has done things, because I think that resembles more in which the way that Pop is capable of being comfortable in doing things. He wants to grow the team and the camaraderie through it because he wants team basketball. Mm-hmm. That's San Antonio's bread and butter. That's at least what it was when they were winning championships. And I could see them getting with the ability of moving things forward when it comes to this draft and a great offseason and a team that has that camaraderie like we've mentioned. So I'd say the Grizzlies are definitely the team that I'd say I would want to emulate, because I've seen them have the ability to not only get lucky in the draft, but build throughout their program. Yeah.
I'll give you some more brownie points with Spurs fans right now. Let's go ahead and make fun of the Rockets now. Hey, but what about them Rockets, Nick? How many high picks have they had? And they still can't get it together?
Exactly.
They still can't get it together.
the Rockets are as frustrating as the traffic around Houston. I mean, it is just brutal. And so what's so interesting is the way in which around the trade deadline, we're trying to move different pieces around and stuff. And it'll be interesting to see, if they want to try to move forward with trying to stay with those 18 wins that they got right now, just ahead of the Spurs. But I think it's as frustrating as it possibly could be for all Houston basketball fans, and so that's tough to be on that side of the state right now.
Absolutely. He is Nick Mantas. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at Nick_Mantas. He's a fellow Lansing, Michigander with me. Yeah, I miss it. I miss Lansing. How long were you in Lansing?
I was in Lansing for 3 years. So I got there in December of 2019. You got me by one. Yeah.
I got you by one. Yeah. Yeah. I'm talking with you and I started like flashbacks of Lansing coming through Faygo. I remember just loving Faygo drinks. Like I fell in love with the Faygo fountain drinks. And then there was Okemos Mall. I used to go to Okemos Mall every freaking weekend.
Mall. Yeah, the Meridian.
Yes, sir, Meridian Mall.
Did you go on the other side to Horrocks on the other side of town? Horrocks is my spot, man. I miss it. I miss it so much. So
I remember crossing the tracks and then going to East Lansing, and then for those that don't know, East Lansing and Lansing, they're like just so close together. They're practically one city, but they divided into Lansing and East Lansing. But what's the dividing mark, buddy, is a railroad track. I don't know if it's still there, but when I was there, it was a railroad track that cut across. And I remember crossing that, and it was like going from night and day. It was just like from quiet little quiet city into boom party town, Michigan. The Spartans. Yeah, and then I had a lot of fun there. But Nick, time for you to brag. What's cooking? What you got going? I know you've been doing a little bit of work or covering the Brahmas out in San Antonio. So what you got? Tell us about yourself.
Well, part of the pun, but I would say, right now, I'm just telling everybody who knows me and has been following my work to just keep it locked on my social media pages. Boom, boom, boom. And right now, that's where I've been putting out a lot of my work and stuff. So, like you've mentioned, my Twitter, Nick_Mantas. My Instagram is Nick Mantas TV. I'm starting to bolster a lot more of my stuff on my YouTube channel, Nick Mantas TV, as well. And possibly have some meetings moving forward with some possible employers. So definitely stay tuned on my social media for that. And things are going good when it comes to the coverage of what we can do when it comes to the Brahmas. And they had a very exciting win yesterday when it comes to beating the Renegades and stuff. And they had a loss against them last week, and then had a turnaround win against them, yesterday. And so it's an exciting time to see what the XFL can bring, and as they move forward, hopefully you can get a couple more wins, ending the regular season with the home stretch, which would be exciting. So, but yeah, got some stuff in the works when it comes to my social media pages, as well as meeting with some people moving forward, and I'm excited to be here, man. So it's a great city, and great to be back in Texas. Like you mentioned, spent some time in Abilene for a year, and I got my master's degree at Northwestern in Chicago. And then from there, going from Chicago to Abilene was a heck of a culture shock into West Texas high school football being out there. And so, but I loved my time there. And for any East Coasters who have made it out to San Antonio, I'm originally from Brookline, Massachusetts, so right next to Boston, and then have bounced around a ton when it comes to doing my undergrad at the University of Arizona, and then I was a strength and conditioning coach in San Francisco, and I lived in Oakland for a little bit. Yeah, and then from there, I got my master's degree at Northwestern. So I've kind of been everywhere. But I'm really been enjoying these first couple of months that I've been here in San Antonio, and getting to know the area, and going to great places like the Friendly Spot and watching games and stuff. And it's been fun. It's been really great to be out here.
Yeah, you mentioned you mentioned Boston, right? That Boston, Mass area. Yeah, yeah. I spent a lot of time in the Boston, Mass area because I had a lot of friends there. There's a lot of friends in the Boston media area, and I feel like Boston's like a second home sometimes. I can go there right now and be like, oh, I know where this place go. Here, you gotta go there. Blah 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 blah. Right? The South Station, and Federal. I think it's Federal Hill. I think it's Federal Hill.
Yep.
So kind of like you, I've traveled a lot across the United States. But but it's really good to meet a fellow guy who knows what it is to like life in Lansing, Michigan. I'll tell you right now, it's not much. But it's not much.
It can get fun though. It can get some good spots, and I think over the last couple of years, it's really spruced up the downtown area a lot. And having the Lansing Lugnuts there is, like you've mentioned, being downtown will bring a lot more people into that area. But you mentioned, as soon as you move over to those other side of town, you get into East Lansing, it becomes a college area, and so that brings all the excitement and fun of being in a college town with the high school football of Mid Michigan's awesome, and as well as Michigan State and University of Michigan rivalry has been really intense. But to see that community come together over the horrible things that happened on Michigan State's campus this past couple of months, or the past when now seeing the run that Tom Izzo and the team had this past March Madness has been really interesting to see how the two schools, I think, are kind of have a little bit more of that respect together, which is exciting.
Absolutely. So he is Nick Mantas. Follow him on Twitter at Nick_Mantas. Make sure you do it right now. We thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day, free and available wherever you get podcasts. Check out Locked On NBA Game to Game, also Odyssey app, YouTube, and for Locked On Spurs, don't forget the Kens 5+ app. Download it right now. So for Nick Mantas, I am Jeff Garcia. We're gonna put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.